اليوم تشهد الموصل تفجير يعني مراقد الأنبياء، قبورهم، مساجدهم. هل هذا من الإسلام بشيء؟
يا ابني قلت لك والله يهودي، خلي يسمعني هالكلب ابن الكلب، والله العظيم عميل يهودي. هو نفسه يقول له على شو اسمه هذا الكلب اسمه؟
أبو بكر البغدادي.
هو هذا أبو بكر، هذا شو اسمه هذا اللي قتل سيدنا الحسين شو اسمه؟ شمر، هذا الشمر، وحتى الشمر أشرف منه بعد. هذا شنو؟ هذا بعد عميل يهودي لا أكثر ولا أقل. والله داعش وماعش والنصرة وحتى محمد عبد الوهاب أبو الوهابية كلهم صناعة يهودية بالمية مية، وخلي يقتلون إذا شوفوا. وأنا مسؤول عن هذا الكلام أمام رب العالمين. إذا كان مو صحيح الله يحط بجهنم، لأنه يكون على علماء وأصحاب دين. والله حركة يهودية يعني مرتبة ترتيبا لتمزيق الأمة، وقد مزقته. هذا التمزيق الأولي، بعد تمزيق أكثر.
Different organizations are spelled and explain them each because there are three major intelligence gathering organizations in Israel. You start with the Mossad. What is it?
Mossad means institute, by the way, and this is an institute for intelligence and special operations. So the Mossad is the foreign espionage arm. Compare it to the CIA.
All right, go down here to the...
Next one is Amman, right? Military intelligence. It's a Hebrew acronym. So it is the intelligence arm of the armed forces. As Yossi was saying, it in fact is the largest and most important. And then it says Shin Bet. Two Hebrew letters, initials for security services. That's the domestic agency, the equivalent of the FBI.
Which one of the three is the most important?
It would be Amman, the military intelligence. Nothing is more important than you're watching your Arab neighbors for actual movements of troops, how many tanks they have, where are the aircraft. All these other missions that we described are fascinating. And even getting, thousands of Jews into the country is vital. But war, having a sign that war is coming, that's the key, and that's Amman's job.
Which is the second most important?
The Mossad. The problem with Amman, with the military intelligence, is that it lives in the shadow of the flamboyant Mossad. It can be compared to the same problem which is facing United States National Security Agency, NSA. It is the largest, the most important agency in the intelligence community. Yet, the most famous one, which gets media attention, is the CIA. The same is in Israel. The Mossad has become sort of epitomizing the Israeli intelligence. But the most important agency is military intelligence. Mossad comes second, and then you have Shin Bet, the Israeli equivalent to the FBI, in charge of fighting terrorism, counter-terrorism, subversion, trying to foil plots against the state of Israel, political plots and others.
You tell the story about how you tried to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly?
I thought it was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up, CIA, or in our case, the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words. As I said, Mossad is institute. But when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS.
We had helped to create the problem we're now fighting. How? Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan. And we were successful. Now you look back, the people we're fighting today, we were supporting in the fight against the Soviets.
Last night, on my orders, America's armed forces began strikes against ISIL targets in Syria.
U.S. counterterrorism officials asking, why are ISIS fighters driving so many similar trucks, and where are they getting them from?
How do we know that the arms that are going to the Syrian rebels are not going to get into the hands of ISIS? because if we had people who were there to funnel it to the right people, and I know these people, and I know who they are, and I know how to do it, and so do other people.
You are basically saying that even in government at the time, you knew those groups were around, you saw this analysis,
Sure.
and you were arguing against it, but who wasn't listening?
I think the administration.
Intelligence officials in Pakistan say a local commander from the terrorist network Islamic State has admitted receiving funds transferred via the U.S.
Today we learned that the same group may now be in possession of a deadly cache of American-made firepower Stinger missiles.
I think it was a willful decision.
A willful decision to go support an insurgency that had Salafists, Al-Qaeda,
Well,
and
a
Muslim
willful
Brotherhood.
decision to do what they're doing, which you have to really ask the president, what is it that he actually is doing?
As I've said before, this aspect of our strategy was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces.
בכל העניינים, מה שישראל לאחרונה נמצא מתצו כמה עניינים. מה שלא יאות, וגם משהו שעדיין משאיר ליבו, אז הייתה משהו ומה הגיעתו. ועושים. הכנראה שהיא מספיק, כי היום כבר כמה שעות בגלל ועדיין ליבו, אבל יש עוד כמה שעות, אבל יש להשתדל גם היום, בצורה טובה. שמחה וטוב לבוא. הכדי שחסידים מקפידים שכל מנהיגים את שמחה. בצורה טובה, הצלחה רבה.
Now, U.S. military aircraft have dropped ammunition in areas held by ISIL terror group in Iraq. Now, according to volunteer forces who are fighting the terrorists, American helicopters dropped boxes of weapons in Yathrib and Balad districts in the Salahuddin province.
We now hear that President Obama will ask Congress for $5.3 billion to equip and train Iraqi soldiers and quote-unquote moderate Syrian rebels to fight the Islamic State militants.
Reports say the U.S. military has airdropped weapons for the ISIL on several occasions.
Last month, I ordered our military to take targeted action against ISIL to stop its advances. Last month, I ordered our military to take targeted action against ISIL to stop its advances. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces.
Do you know that he made the Air Force drop leaflets telling the ISIS truck drivers to get out, that bombs were going to fall? Did you know that? Does anyone know that he did that? This is going to make people think twice about this guy. This is not as clear as it may be of he's just a pacifist or a liberal. There's something more here, Donald.
Unclassified reports have estimated that in just the first 12 months of renewed ISIS operations in Syria and Iraq, they've recruited more than 22,000 foreign fighters. At least 4,000 are Westerners. So those are Americans, Brits, French citizens, German citizens.
It was very disturbing to pull this from the UN website in September. It says of the 381,412 arrivals that came across the Mediterranean Sea just this year up to September, that 15% were children, 13% were women, and 72% were men.
Such a backlash against Syrian refugees coming to the United States after the word that some of these attackers may have passed through Syria. 31 governors now say they don't want them living in their states. Many presidential candidates calling for a ban or religious tests. Congress moving for a moratorium on new refugees.
We don't have the systems in place on the ground to collect the information to vet. That would be the concern.
Yes, I think that's the challenge we're all talking about, is that we can only query against that which we have collected.
You can't account for what you don't know, and that goes to the intelligence deficit that I think is embedded in your question.
I grabbed my binoculars and I could see the towers from my window, and this is where I'm looking, and all of a sudden down there I see this van parked. And I see 3 guys on top of the van, and I could see that they were like happy. They didn't look shocked to me. They didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
Amazingly enough, we have found the moving company where the 5 Israelis worked.
Was this building being used as a front for some kind of Israeli intelligence operation that possibly was doing surveillance on the Arab American community? Were there men celebrating or slapping 5s or whatever?
We had received an all-points bulletin, and I just happened to see the van and, hollered over to my lieutenant, I think that could be the van. We checked it out, and it was. We were all on edge, obviously, so I really wasn't looking to make friends with these people, and neither were the officers that I were with. Once we started talking to them, they were pretty much like, hey, we're not against you, we're with you.
And word late tonight that 2 suspects are in FBI custody after a truckload of explosives was discovered around the George Washington Bridge. That bridge links New York to New Jersey over the Hudson River. Whether the discovery of those explosives has anything to do with other events of the day is unclear, but the FBI has 2 suspects in hand, said the truck load of explosives, enough explosives were in the truck to do great damage to the George Washington Bridge. But they arrested the 2 suspects and they're questioning them as we speak. President Bush says the death toll at the World Trade Center and today's other targets is in the thousands.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks and finally deported on immigration violations after the FBI cleared them of any involvement in 9/11.
The U.S. has been sharing unfiltered intelligence with Israel, including the private data of American citizens, according to a confidential document that was part of whistleblower Edward Snowden's leaks. It shows that Washington set no limits as to how its ally could use the information. RT's Paula Sleer joins me live from Tel Aviv. Paula, tell us more about what's in this leak.
Well, what we're talking about here is a top secret 5-page memorandum of understanding that lays out all the details of intelligence sharing between the NSA and its Israeli counterpart. What it does reveal is that the NSA routinely shared raw intelligence with Israel without first sifting this information to remove information that was inside relating to American citizens. It states that Israel is allowed to receive raw intelligence signal. It includes unevaluated and unminimized transcripts, gist, faxes, telex, voice and digital network intelligence, metadata and content. And that is a quote. At the same time, the agreement places no legally binding limits on the use of the data by the Israelis. So while the memorandum does say that the material has to be handled in accordance with US law, and at the same time the Israelis have agreed not to deliberately target Americans who identify identified in the data, there is no kind of legal obligation to back up these claims. In this respect, what it reads is that the agreement is not intended to create any legally enforceable rights. It is not an international agreement, and it is not legally binding. It also says that the Israelis were required to destroy upon recognition any communication that is either to or from an official in the US government. This includes the White House, cabinet departments, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, amongst others.
Paula, has there been any reaction from the NSA over these revelations?
Well, the NSA so far has declined to answer specific questions about this agreement. An NSA spokesperson has said that the agency insists that the shared intelligence complies with all laws governing privacy. There was a statement that they did release, and in that statement they said, and again I'm quoting, "We are not going to comment on any specific information sharing arrangements or the authority under which any such information is collected. The fact that intelligence services work together under specific and regulated conditions mutually strengthens the security of both nations." So that has been their formal response.
But the NSA scandal, it just seems to run and run, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I mean, we're looking at a scandal that has at its heart Edward Snowden, this 30-year-old former National Security Agency contractor who made public documents that show that the NSA and its international partners conducted mass surveillance of foreign nationals and US citizens. Certainly, these documents continue to be an embarrassment both to the NSA and the American government.